Cultivated for 5,000 years and grown all over the world, basil is one of the most prolific culinary herbs. There are literally more than 100 different varieties of basil. We're most familiar with sweet basil, but the look and taste of all of these different varieties can vary dramatically. There's a lemon basil and a cinnamon basil. They both make great mosquito repellents, by the way. We love Italian basil and Greek basil, and there are so many other types of basil to try and discover. I'm Charity Nebbe. On this episode of Iowa Ingredient, basil feels right at home in a scenic northeastern Iowa setting, Jupiter Ridge Farm. We'll check it out. And Chef Matt Steigerwald inspires us as he cooks delicious recipes with basil in our studio kitchen.
Rip it up right at the end.
All that and more coming up next on Iowa Ingredient.
Funding for Iowa Ingredient is provided by the W.T. and Edna M. Dahl Trust, Chef Lisa Laval of Trellis Cafe and the River Center, and Chef Michael Laval of the Des Moines Embassy Club. For more than 100 years, the Des Moines Embassy Club has provided a place to dine, celebrate, and do business, located in downtown Des Moines and in West Des Moines. And Friends, the Iowa PBS Foundation.
Making this brown vegetable style is actually seaweed. Olive oil, honey, a little bit of apple cider vinegar, and lemon juice.
It is. These are really, really good. Salud.
Salud.
With origins in India, basil has enjoyed its place on the global stage for millennia, and not just the culinary stage. In ancient Egypt, it was used for embalming and preserving. It's been found in tombs. It was used in a number of different kinds of ancient medicine. In Greece and Portugal, it holds an important role in some holiday celebrations. In modern scientific studies, it's been found to have antioxidant and even antiviral properties, and it can be used fresh or dry. Here in Iowa, it's popular in our gardens and in our kitchens. Basil makes itself known in the garden, greeting you with a fresh aroma few other plants can rival. And wise growers like Will Lorenzen and Adrian White know how to use basil to its full potential at the farmer's market.
Well, it's kind of a dirty trick. When people are walking past at farmer's market, I'll kind of crunch up a little basil leaf and you can watch them kind of like turn and follow their nose towards it. And it's very familiar to a lot of people. You know, it smells like their grandmother's kitchen or the first step into their garden. Got kind of a almost cinnamon flavor.
Yeah.
It's mainly an Italian style basil.
It's generally the same flavor.
Adrian and Will own and operate Jupiter Ridge Farm outside of Garber in northeast Iowa. Aside from basil, these passionate farmers grow a wide array of mushrooms and vegetables.
But this is like a through and through purple basil.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't picture myself really doing anything else. Just growing food sustainably that's wholesome and healthy for the community is, no matter how hard it gets, it always feels fulfilling, and it always feels like, oh, I'm doing something amazing, as difficult as it gets.
And we've got a couple more varieties in this house over here.
When it comes to planting basil, it's all about waiting for the right temperature. Much like tomatoes, basil is cold intolerant. One ill-timed frost and your crop is gone.
It's all gnarly looking.
Basil can kind of be divided up into strong greenhouse producers and then more of a field basil. Iowa does have some really hot, dry summers, and it does just fine. You can kind of see here versus here, the much smaller leaves.
It requires a little bit of maintenance, but definitely not as involved as like tomatoes, like trellising and pruning and all that stuff, but just like a little bit of maintenance. There we go.
But you want to let it grow big enough that it starts to have some vigor when you do start to harvest it. So I would say generally about a month after transplant, you start getting like a few small sprigs, and you want to let it grow. Take minimally until it gets really bushy, and that's when you can start really liberally harvesting it. The basil is kind of like the hydra. Every time you cut off one head of it, it sends out 2 more, and that can end up having some really crowded areas and dense foliar structure in the plant. It can just create problems if it's too dense. When you're pruning and harvesting basil, wherever you have one of these growth tips, here it's gonna shoot off into 2 new leads, and it's gonna get thicker and bushier. So when you're harvesting and pruning, what you wanna do is make sure that you're cutting out the middle of the plant. So when you're done, you know, getting your bunch, you see how that's all open in the middle there now? That gives it a lot more airflow. That also gives it more room to grow.
And then another thing you want to do is the basil will try to flower, and it doesn't take too much work or maintenance, but as it's flowering, you want to go through and remove flowers regularly, because then that'll keep the basil in its foliar state. It'll grow bigger, tastier leaves, and it'll be more in line with the kind of culinary herb you want to use.
Basil is the perfect garden plant. It's incredibly easy to grow, it's prolific, and it tastes great in a variety of dishes. The next time you're planting your garden or raised bed or even a windowsill pot, consider basil. It will not disappoint.
My name is Matt, and I became a chef because I grew up in a house where my mom and dad were avid cooks, and really kind of, I have 5 brothers and sisters, and the kitchen was the center of the house. And friends came over all the time and ate dinner at our house, and it was just a very loving, fun space. And so I always just felt comfortable in the kitchen. I felt really loved in the kitchen. My friends even now will say to me, I used to love coming to your parents' house for dinner. This is a roasted swordfish, and we're doing a kind of pasta called fregola, Sardinian baked little, looks like couscous, a little bigger than a couscous, with some local sweet corn and local roasted broccoli and some applewood smoked bacon. I think I've learned it's not always about food for a diner. They're here, they want to have a great time, but I mean, the food's got to be great, but it doesn't, they're not necessarily here because you have that particular steak on the menu. They're here because it's a beautiful space and their friends are in town, and yeah, the food's great, but it's not an afterthought, but it's not the first thing. And I think as I've gotten older, I just want it to be simpler. Like I think I focus less on the plate and more on the table and who's eating and what we're talking about. I think that's an important way to look at eating. I think I've learned that over the years. When I'm cooking, I try to cook something that I specifically want to eat, and that tends to, in my past, in my life, has done me well, because I feel like often the things that I care about the most, that I want to eat, are things that people appreciate the most here or like the most. Somehow I feel like, because it's so personal, people often think that you make things too personal, that it doesn't read to the general public because it's too much your thing. But I think the more you make things personal, especially with cooking, the more it relates to the total human experience, and people actually will latch onto it and really enjoy it.
And now we are here in the kitchen with Chef Matt, and this is particularly exciting because you were our very first chef on Iowa Ingredient on the very first show.
I remember that.
Which was all about rhubarb. But now we are going to do some cooking with basil.
Yeah, basil's great in the summer.
Well, and there's so many different kinds of basil, dozens and dozens of different kinds of basil, but we've got, what, 8 different kinds here. So tell me just a little bit about them.
So there's many flavors. Ones we're going to focus on today would be the Thai basil, probably, for this recipe itself. Cinnamon basil is one of my favorites, too, because it seems to really come through. The basic flavor of basil has a pepperiness to it, and I think the cinnamon balances really well with that. But there's also licorice and straight Italian basil as well. There's the opal basil. It's more of an ornamental, more of a garnish, but it does have that peppery feel. And then the globe basil is a bush basil, and those are typically the strongest.
Okay, interesting. Well, I know what Italian basil tastes like, so I'm going to try a little bit of this cinnamon basil. There definitely is a cinnamon
you get a warm
there.
Spice in the background, kind of, right?
And you feel like that balances the peppery.
I like it, yeah, it does. Yeah. Because I think of cinnamon as being a sort of a sweet spice. So kind of the sweet and then the peppery, almost like barbecue sort of balance.
I'm going to try some of this Thai too. You said you're going to use some of this?
I like the Thai because I feel like it's the least basil-y basil.
The least basil-y basil, okay.
And it's really familiar when I think of going to like a Thai restaurant.
Well, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
What are we going to make with basil?
We're going to make a shrimp toast. So this is like a Chinese dim sum. Started out about 100 years ago. It's a Cantonese recipe, and has evolved into more of a Chinese-American recipe. You take shrimp and a few other ingredients, sugar, soy, ginger, a little egg white, and you puree it in a food processor or a blender, and then you spread it on bread, and you deep fry it.
Nice.
And it's a great little snack. It's
All
really,
right.
really great.
All right, well, let's put it together.
So we're going to put the shrimp in here first. This is about a pound of shrimp, ginger, garlic, a little bit of scallion.
Wait, is that ginger and garlic
Ginger,
together?
yep, yeah, they're in the same bowl. Ginger, garlic, that's a different show. This is white sugar, cornstarch, helps to bind it a little bit. Toasted sesame oil, soy sauce. I like a smoked soy sauce. I'm a little snobby about that, but it just helps. I just like the flavor better. And egg white is very important because it binds it all together and helps when you fry it. It puffs up a little bit and has a nice lightness to it.
Nice.
And then we're gonna put some basil in there. We're gonna try some of this Thai basil, just torn up in there. And that's another thing about basil and about a lot of fresh herbs is you're really better off not cutting it too early. And I just like to tear it because it gets the oils out of it, which a lot of flavors there, and it makes your fingers smell really nice too. So.
Nice. So it just releases the flavor right before you put it in there. And a little goes a long way.
It really does, yeah. This recipe for a pound of shrimp calls for a quarter cup of herbs of some kind.
Okay.
And once it starts going, we're gonna scrape down the sides a little bit, and then let it go.
All right, so we've got a beautiful shrimp paste.
Yes.
What happens next?
So I like to use a firm white bread. This is a potato bread, and usually it would be like a day old, so it's a little bit firmer. And then you just take off the crust, because when we're gonna fry this, it's gonna get a little dark, and if you leave the crust on, it gets too dark.
Okay.
And then
hard to chew.
Yeah, it is. And so I like to make a little bit of a sort of a pyramid shape with the shrimp toast. This thing looks nice. There's probably like 2 tablespoons on each of these.
A nice hearty serving.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. And then I take these, and this is not a necessary step, but I like how it looks. I take them and I lay them in the sesame seeds. Nice. Because I think it's a nice look to it.
And it certainly gives you a little crunch.
With the fryer, yeah. An extra sesame flavor. There's sesame oil in it, but it adds a little something nice to it. Okay.
Oh, nice.
And then we'll just go over to the fryer and see how they work out.
All right, and we've already heated this oil, so.
Yes, and hopefully they will be beautiful. So I like to put the bread side down first.
Okay.
Because if you put the shrimp side down first, the oil is still getting to the bread, but it's kind of soaking in. This way you get the hottest oil on the part that could get soggy. I'm gonna flip them over.
Beautiful golden brown. Nice.
And when I do these, I feel like the best result is because you've made a pyramid shape, right where the deepest part of that pyramid hits the bread should be just a little undercooked, right at the very bottom. If you go too long, it's okay. They get a little spongy, but they're still delicious. Going too short, you have a little bit of raw shrimp, and people aren't necessarily happy with that.
Lovely.
Okay.
So you let a little bit of the grease drain.
Let it sit for a minute.
I love how it puffed up. That's so great.
Yeah. And you just want to make sure the inside's just cooked. That's nice.
Yeah, it looks perfect.
Just finished there. Okay. And then this is a black tobacco, so it's a flying fish roe, and just garnish with that. It gives a little bit of saltiness. Mm-hmm. The other thing that we do is we would take some of these herbs, like the basil, and we could drop them in the fryer because the oil's still hot.
Oh.
This works with a lot of herbs. We use it as a garnish on a lot of things at the restaurant. And the stems will bubble a little longer than the leaves. And then drain them off.
Does it give them a little crunch?
It does, yeah.
Nice.
And then you can garnish with these as well because it's really pretty.
Oh, that's fun. That's gorgeous.
There you go.
Awesome. And it's so much simpler than I thought it would be.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Oh, that's
Well, good.
fantastic.
Good.
That's beautiful. Chef Matt, thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, you're taking us on a trip around the world.
Indeed.
So tell me about this next dish. We're going to the Middle East.
Yeah, so what we're doing today is the lamb loin. It's kind of a kebab, small lamb loin, sliced thin. And then I made a marinade with lemon basil and cinnamon basil, garlic, some other dark spices. Urfa chili is a great chili that we use a lot for Middle Eastern things. And I also do a little dill in this too. Salt. I like to salt small pieces of meat late.
Okay.
Large roasts and things, I'll salt ahead of time, like a day ahead of time even for a large roast. But for something small like this, if you salt it too far ahead of time, it's going to kind of almost like cure it because it's so thin. And those will take, depending on your heat, those will take 2-3 minutes aside.
Okay.
And then we're going to garnish it with something that's called an Israeli salad. It's a salad that you do see all over Israel with roasts and even like street fare. So it's pretty much always cucumber and tomato. I've seen them with dill. I've seen them with just straight parsley or mint. We're going to use the lemon basil a lot in this one. I might even use a little bit of licorice basil as well.
Okay. So you've got sun-dried tomatoes, but you could use fresh tomatoes too?
Normally you would use fresh tomatoes. Balancing the flavors of acid and salt together in a dish is 90% of the game. If I can get cooks to get that working, you know, the lemon versus the salt, it really can make anything that you're not that happy with just perfect. And I do a lot of lemon in this. And then we're gonna do chopped parsley, a nice amount of olive oil.
Nice.
And then we're gonna get to our basil. So we'll use a little bit of lemon basil. Like we talked about before, I really like to rip it up right at the end because it gets those oils out. And we'll do a little bit of the cinnamon basil because we have cinnamon basil on the marinade. Okay, and then we'll just stir that up. Check it for salt. Usually we'd make this an hour ahead of time just to let the flavors kind of get to know each other.
All right, we're gonna put all the parts together. You have some hummus.
Yeah, I like to have something down, you know, just to hold things in place. And then we'll do a couple
And
of
if it
the,
happens to taste amazing, then
if it
that's
happens
even better, right?
even better. And we'll do a couple of the lamb kebabs. And then our Israeli salad. And I just garnish with this a little bit. Just a nice little appetizer. And I like to finish things with olive oil and lemon and salt all the time anyway. Makes me feel good.
Makes everybody feel good.
And then we've got some of the globe basil, which is kind of the small bush basil that's a little bit more peppery. We'll garnish with that as well.
All right.
That's it.
Oh, that looks gorgeous. And let's give it a try.
So one thing we do at the restaurant is you make really good pita bread.
All right.
So if you wanted to have a little of that with it, that would be a nice combination.
I'm gonna have some of this salad. I wanna make sure I get a little
some
bit of
of the
that
hummus.
amazing hummus and basil.
And the basil's in the
for
salad.
sure, and tomato. Oh, that's so good. And the basil note is really nice in there. It's such a bright, fresh dish. And then the basil just spices it up a little bit.
The cinnamon basil comes through really well with the lamb.
Well, that is fantastic. Chef Matt, thank you so much.
Thank you, it was a lot of fun.
Chefs, restaurants, and growers across the state have started to bring the table to the garden. Farm dinners are becoming more and more popular, and during the height of the growing season, it's pretty easy to find one in your area. Not only are farm dinners a great opportunity to sample the bounty of our state, but they give people a chance to reconnect with the growers in their communities.
We wanted to give our customers an experience to actually eat where the food was grown.
Daniel and Ellen Roseman are two busy individuals. Aside from owning the restaurant Milk and Honey in Harlan, Daniel farms with his family just outside of town. Midsummer, on what was one of the hottest days of the year, they helped organize a farm dinner to highlight what they do and to showcase a wide and diverse array of growers around the area.
Peas with oats, wheat, and barley together, 4 crops.
Oh, they're delicious.
We're a 5th generation farm. My brother, myself, and my dad are all on the farm now. There's a love for the land and to treat it with respect. That's been handed down through my family. We're very proud of the way we farm.
We've got so many things coming to you. So I have marinated tomatoes, and I have grilled romaine with bacon vinaigrette coming to you now. And the flowers garnishing the meal tonight are nasturtiums. They are edible if you would like to eat them.
We try to promote our style of farming, and this farm dinner is one way to showcase the type of farming we do. It really is a good way to show people where their food comes from and that it can be done in a sustainable way that is sustainable not just environmentally but also economically.
Milk from Milton, beans from North English, syrup from Garnavillo, produce from Kelowna, Pandora, Orient, and Glenwood. The list goes on, showcasing Iowa's diverse ingredients.
There's so much fresh veg right now, too, that we lighten it up with as much fresh vegetables in different places, and yeah, just really have fun with that part.
So we really believe that supporting local farmers supports the local economy. Farms, when they have more outlets to sell their food, have more opportunity to scale their farm. So we do everything we can to support our local growers.
Those cherry tomatoes?
Yeah.
We had folks that drove over 3 hours to come eat.
Probably the freshest meal I've ever had.
Friends of our family and then neighbors, and then there were quite a few folks that maybe didn't know anybody, but everybody made friends because we all sat in one long table together underneath a tent, and it was all family style.
It's hard to get more quintessentially Iowan than a summertime meal on a farm. What better way to eat local than by sitting down to a table laden with food grown only steps away from where you sit? That's it for this week's episode. I'm Charity Nebbe. See you next time for another peek at our state's culture through our farmers and food, right here on Iowa Ingredient. Keep in mind that circumstances are always changing, so please take a moment to check ahead if you're planning to visit a restaurant, farm, or event featured on the show.
Funding for Iowa Ingredient is provided by the W.T. and Edna M. Dahl Trust, Chef Lisa Laval of Trellis Cafe and the River Center, and Chef Michael Laval of the Des Moines Embassy Club. For more than 100 years, the Des Moines Embassy Club has provided a place to dine, celebrate, and do business, located in downtown Des Moines and in West Des Moines. And Friends, the Iowa PBS Foundation. Generations of family and friends who feel passionate about the programs they watch on Iowa PBS.